Aloha viewers, EricTheCarGuy. Yes, my 2001 Acura Integra GSR that you've been begging for videos on. So I went into my parts department, came up with this, something I took off of a friend of mine's vehicle. Actually, it was a Type R many years ago. And he wanted me to replace it because it was rusty. So he replaced it with one that wasn't rusty. He gave me this one for my trouble. Today I'm going to put it on this car. Now I could clean it up, make it all pretty and nice before I put it on, but I'm not. I just want to put it on and see if there's a difference. Why? Because I can, and you're going to watch the video. Here's the old manifold. We'll first start by removing the dipstick. Has 1, 2, 3, maybe, yeah, there's 4 fasteners that hold this heat shield onto the outside that I'm going to get first. They all start out as 12 millimeter, but after they rust for a while, well, you might be guessing to figure out what exact size they might be. We'll start with 12. Super breaker of rust. I'll link it in the description. I've been finding it works pretty good. Obviously I can't fit an impact down to the lower ones, so I'm going to start with my long wrench here to get to those. But these upper ones, I'm just going to start right off with an impact. I like using an impact on rusty fasteners. I find the impacting motion is very beneficial when it comes to breaking rusty, crusty fasteners loose. And that came loose, which is awesome. I don't know if that did or not. I think my wrench just slipped. Yep, it's no longer 12. So that's one we have to get creative with. And these, once again, impact. Might have possibly found a solution. 7/16 is close to a 12 millimeter, but it's a little bigger than that. So I've got a 6 point, I'm sorry, as opposed to the 12 point that's on there. I'm gonna try a 6 point, 12 millimeter to see if I can at least get it to start to move. I'll be darned. It worked, and I will take that win. That's usually the troubled one for me. All right, now for those top ones. As mentioned, I'm going to be using an impact swivel socket. Those are the easy ones, right? Now we can just lift the cover off. I'll be sweeping the floor later. I'm going to go underneath to do some work. While I'm doing that, I'm going to apply penetrating oil to these rusty guys. Sure hope that works. I will now remove the lower splash shield. To do this, there are 10 millimeter fasteners in the front, these metal ones here. There are also plastic ones here, 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 and finally, here. I'm going to use my hand ratchet for these plastic ones. And you just take out the center part, which just unscrews like this. Then when it's almost all the way out, just pull on it and everything comes together. Repeat process for other fasteners. What's nice about these plastic ones is they don't rust. People mangle them and they get difficult to work with, but they don't rust. It's like magic. Did I forget to mention there's another plastic one up here, just like on the other side. Same drill, except for this time, I'm gonna get all electric on it because I can. Full force on the metal ones. Oh, I'm sorry, there's 3 in the front. I thought there was 3 in the front. This one here was hiding in the middle. I have this O2 sensor here that needs to come out. I'm first going to disconnect the connector because as you twist it, the wires will also twist. I don't wish to damage them. It's still a good O2 sensor. These also respond well to penetrating oil. If you have some difficulty getting them to come loose, I'll be able to show you a little bit easier exactly what I'm doing once it's off. But try not to get any contamination on the outside of the sensor because that can contaminate it and cause it to go bad. So you don't want to get any oil or other stuff on it. You might have to reach for that penetrating oil. So far, a penetrating weld has been a key component of this exchange. I'm just going to put a little bit around the base here. See these holes up here? You want to try to avoid spraying these holes because that's the vents for the other side of the sensor. There we are. It helped to work it back and forth. Okay. There's a little part of this connector right in here that I was depressing in order to release the lock. Now we have choices. O2 sensors are, all the ones I've seen are 7/8. I have a 7/8 wrench in my hand, but because of the connector, I can't use the box end, which in a situation like this, we really want the box end because if we use the open end, it can spread apart and thus round the fastener. So I have a couple of other options, which I normally only use for installation of O2 sensors. And this one allows the wire to go up in here so I don't damage the wire, but it also has that potential to spread just like the wrench does. This one, on the other hand, goes all the way around and it has this little indentation here that I can put the wire through. So this is my favored tool for this. Now, if I was just replacing the sensor, I would just cut the wire and use the box end of this wrench. Real easy to do. But in this case, I'm trying to save the sensor, so I don't want to damage the wire. This one may be my best option. So sockets that have 360-degree coverage, this one's got most of it and it's pretty good, but because this is so long, it still has the potential to spread apart. Choose your tools carefully. As I said, the box end of the wrench won't necessarily fit over the connector. However, if you're really desperate and this is all you have, you can go in and take the wires out of the back of the connector, take a picture or whatever before you take it apart and make sure you get all the wires back in where they were. And then you can just slip this over the outside of the wire. When you've got it all set, all done, you can put the connector back together with the wires and you'll still be able to use it. Options. I'm trying to give you options. I'm going to try to position my breaker bar over on this side, which means I need to put this on like this. So I'm going to run the wire over here and I'm going to make it so that it comes out this indentation here. I'm going to put links in the description of tools and things I'm using. So if you're wondering how this can make your life better, where you can get one for your own self, I will try to make that easier for you. That won't allow me to come down far enough. I do have another breaker bar I can try. Excellent. Now that it's broken loose, it should spin right out. You know what? Come to think of it, I could have waited till I got this out of the car because I'm taking this whole assembly out anyway. I didn't have to do this in the car. I could have like put it in the vise and had an easier access. We made it happen. Believe it or not, we only have a few more fasteners to go. That would be these two spring bolts here that connect the pipe to the catalytic converter. This is referred to as the A pipe. And just an FYI aside, GSRs are famous for this. If you have a buzzing noise at a certain RPM range, first check all the exhaust shields and see if they're tight. As you can see, I've hose clamped these and these are pretty much good to go. But if you still have the buzzing noise and you know you don't have any other issues, it's quite possible that this pipe is causing the noise. It's a double wall pipe. That means there's a pipe inside of this pipe. When the welds break loose, it vibrates and makes a buzzing noise. So if you have a GSR, this doesn't really apply to the LS model. They don't have the same issue. GSR, check this. These spring bolts have had a better day. In fact, there's very little left. I could go through the trouble of heating these nuts and spinning these out and doing all that stuff, but I'm not going to do that because I went through my stash and found a couple of these, which I'm going to use to replace. Now, these are not the Honda factory ones, but they'll fasten everything together just fine. We'll be able to move on with our lives. So I'm just going to cut these bolts rather than try to deal with them with heat and all that. Then there's two 12mm fasteners right here that hold to that bracket. As I said, I'm just going to cut through these bolts just to save time. Dramatic, right? Apologies, I misspoke earlier. These are 14mm, not 12mm. There's two of them. It's simple to say remove the fasteners from the cylinder head. It may not be so simple, however. They may be rusted, they may not be quite the right size. You gotta watch out for these nuts on the end here. They sort of change sizes on you more than the bolts do in the middle. But they start out as 12 millimeter, and I'm gonna go for the difficult ones first on the outside, remove them all. Penetrating oil seemed to do its job. I'm pleased by that. Super happy. I'm hoping that the rest go equally as well. Let's watch Eric turn some bolts. It's terribly exciting. Terribly. All right then. That's a win, people. It's all the fasteners. All of them. We're going to drop it down through the bottom and insert it up from the bottom. The reason why I did things the way I did them and I didn't do the top ones first is I wanted to give the penetrating oil some time while we were working underneath. We're just going to, yeah, it's loose. We'll just have to unhook it and it'll be ours. Normally there's another thing that you have to disconnect, and there's this bracket that holds the exhaust manifold to the engine block. And as you can see, this fastener is missing. There's two 14 millimeters, one going to the block and one up here on the side. What I do is I'll take the one out from the block and I'll loosen this one here so it can flop around, so when I put the new part up into place, it will have a little moving, breathing room. Thing is, we don't have provisions for this on our new part, so it really doesn't matter. So we can just pry this off here, but normally you'd have to remove a 14 millimeter fastener from here, or you remove this one. Like I said, I remove this one and loosen this one, that way this one can move around. Once everything's in position, I tighten it down and it's happy. This is the only thing holding us up right now is this bracket. We just need to gently pry off of it. Make sure you hang on to it because it's going to want to drop down. Perhaps I'll grab another pry bar and pry it off the engine. You can do it. Hang up on the bleeder valve of the slave cylinder. AC hoses aren't helping. Neither is the AC compressor. There we are. Huh. A little fiddly, but it finally came loose. Now, you could do this a better way. You could take off these three fasteners here and remove this A-pipe assembly from the manifold, and it would actually be easier. You could take this part off the bottom, you could take this part out the top. I just did it this way because I'm replacing the whole unit. Here's the two parts side by side. I hope I didn't give you the impression that this is a stock Type R manifold, because it's not. This is an aftermarket. It's a DC Sports, I believe. Yeah, right there. DC Sports header that you could buy for this engine. It also fits a Type R. It just happens to be the vehicle that I took it off of. One thing I noticed right off the bat, as far as performance increase from something like this is considerably lighter than this. In fact, we can prove that because I do have a scale, but cast iron as opposed to some kind of steel. I'm not exactly sure what type. Another option would be to exhaust wrap this. I'm not doing that, I'm just putting it on. Let's get the scale. First, let's weigh the old part. Wow, almost bang on 25 pounds. And now the new part. Oh. Wow, just about 9 pounds. It's a substantial weight savings. Now this weight difference may be just negligible, but it's still a weight difference. It pretty much means I can have the cupcake for dessert. As it happens, in addition to having this header, I also have the gaskets, actual OE gaskets that are left over from my dealership days that I can use for this part. You can take the old one off if you can get it off one piece and reuse this gasket. It's graphite, so it's really designed to have a little bit of movement to it. This gasket, you can decide to replace or not replace. It's a steel gasket. Actually, I'm kind of debating on whether I'll replace this now because I'm sort of doing this part because I have it. And when I'm done with the car, I'll probably start with all new parts or do something with this and then use my new gasket then. That's kind of what my thinking is right now, but I'm gonna reuse the old gasket, but I could use the new gasket. Part numbers, that one got kind of mangled, but that looks like a 182. I'll see if I can go online and pull this up for you later. There's a part number for that one. Threads in here are kind of crusty, rusty. I think the quickest way to deal with this is with my wire wheel. I'm gonna go see if I've got a tap that I can just quickly run through this. Can't quite get all the way down in there. Goes in like nothing. Yay. All right, we got it on the workbench. Anti-seize on the thread, always on an O2 sensor. They even come with little packets of it when you buy new ones. I don't mind using my open end wrench here for this. Perfect. Let's get this in the car. Hoping this goes in easier than the old one came out. It's a lot smaller and lighter. It's got that going for it. Might be easier from the top. Not going as well as I'd planned. Therefore, I'm going to remove the O2 sensor because I do not want to damage it. One less thing to worry about during installation. I don't know. I'm not so certain this is going to work. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's not. I do have to come up from the bottom, thinking I will remove the slave cylinder. I'm not going to disconnect the hydraulics or anything like that. I'm just going to remove it from its mounting point on the transmission. That will give me that extra space to slide this part up through there. Two 12mm fasteners hold it to the transmission, and there's also two 10mm fasteners up here that I'm going to remove. That way I don't put any stress on the metal line. I'm going to start with these two 10s for the slave cylinder piping. Now I can just take the slave cylinder right up off of here. We're getting a little bit extra here, but if you look at the end of that slave cylinder, you'll see it's got a little bit of orange dust on it, rusty looking. If you get a squeaky clutch actuation, so if you step on the clutch pedal and you hear a squeak, before I reinstall this, I'm going to put a little bit of anti-seize on that ball, and that usually cures that squeak. Now, if the squeak is inside the car, that could be the pivot point inside, which also can be an issue. Most times what I see is just a little bit of corrosion there causing it to squeak during application. Hopefully we got room now. Here's that old gasket. Like I said, I don't really have a problem with these leaking, so I think I'll be fine in reusing it. And I'm just going to save the good one for when I put a good manifold on here. Right now, I think it's going to do just fine. Let's try this again, shall we? Yeah, remove the slave cylinder. That just made it easy. Might have to fudge that bracket slightly. Fasteners for this aren't quite lining up like I'd like them to. Other than that, it's pretty much a direct fit. As I said, this bracket's not lining up with these holes. It's got two 14mm fasteners up on the back of the engine block. I'm gonna loosen those up and see if I can move the bracket around so that everything lines up. Just gonna put these fasteners on here for now. I'm not gonna tighten any of this stuff until I've got it securely fastened to the engine. That way it won't bind up. It'll play nice. Now for the spring bolts. Now I am going to fasten these down. This is the part that's connected to the engine. The engine is the part that actually moves. So I'm going to make sure I fasten it here first. Sequence is important because, once again, if you bind things up when you tighten them down. You could cause leaks or stress cracks, all kinds of malfeasance. This part fits pretty good. Can't stress enough on how I'm doing this for fun and your benefit. You want a GSR videos? Start in the center and work your way out when you're tightening them. I'm going to use a 1/4-inch wrench. I don't know the exact torque spec here. I've always just used a 1/4-inch wrench and I've never broken one yet. Obviously don't over torque. Smaller tools like a 1/4-inch like this will help keep you from breaking things. I didn't put any anti-seize or anything on the fasteners. There wasn't any to begin with. They've been on there since 2001. It's about 15 years at this point. I think we're good. Sometimes if it's not broke, don't fix it. This is one of those times. I'm kind of glad I didn't clean this up, because then the rest of my engine would look really dirty. That all kind of fits. Dipstick. I've cleaned it off before it goes in, so I don't put a dirty dipstick in there. I'm gonna get some of that anti-seize I spoke about, put that on the slave cylinder before I reinstall it. Got a squeak, that will help. Also, this rubber boot can make it so that this doesn't like to go in there as well. So make sure that the rod is inserted down into the slave cylinder, or else this whole thing could come apart when you go to apply the clutch. I'm thinking I'm going to put these two fasteners in up here, and then I'll finish tightening the slave cylinder when it's up in the air and I finish up down underneath. Much easier under here. Little piece of trivia. The car, the Type R that I took this header off of, belonged to the brother of the woman that I bought this car from. Right? This whole thing has a sister-brother kind of deal going on. Now for these. Okay, now we got the final 4 fasteners. Yeah, probably gonna come up in there with a wrench, but at least I can do these lower ones. Now the O2 sensor. Without this, there'd be a giant exhaust leak. I wouldn't feel very proud of my repair if there was a giant exhaust leak when I was done. Reconnect the electrical connector and clip it back into place. All we have left is the splash shield. I'll be honest, it wouldn't be a bad idea to put anti-seize on these, but I'll let you in on a secret. Unless it's dry, I'm not driving this thing in the winter. I got plenty of other vehicles with better tires. So this will likely never see the winter again, so I'm not too worried about it. But if your vehicle is your one and only, and you're putting these fasteners back in, do yourself a favor, a little bit of anti-seize. These, just push them into place and then push the nut in. You don't need to screw them back in, you just push them. I'll show you here on one in a minute. Hear that? This goes right in. Here's one for you. It's over that quick. Before we go out for our test drive, I'm going to start it up, check for leaks. Sounds good so far. It's quiet up here. I hear a little rattle somewhere, but it's not leaking anywhere. I think we're good. I don't hear any leaks at all. Let's go drive. Here we go. Is it better? Not the same. Don't really notice much of a difference. Maybe it's more responsive. Maybe. If I went out and spent money on this part and put it on the car, I don't know if I'd be like, yeah, that's so much better now. I'm not quite feeling that. I mean, I like it, but I've always liked the car. So, whatever that means. Yeah, it pulls nice. It might sound a little better, maybe, but that's where I'm at. I'm kind of like, maybe it's better, maybe. I can't say, yeah, definitively, whoa, totally worth it. The engine looks cooler. We're a little bit lighter, but yeah, I don't know. I can't really say that if I went out and spent money on this that I got a great improvement. The way to do this is to do dyno testing, but the dyno is like 3 hours north of here. Well, actually like 4 hours north of here. The one I know of anyway. So we're not gonna do that. But aside from that, if you went to install one of these headers on this engine, or even the LS engine, I think you'd be fine. You know, these instructions walk you through. Main takeaway, take off the slave cylinder, both before you remove the old one and when you go to install the new one. It'll make life so much easier. Aside from that, we talked about the O2 sensor stuff and the O2 sensor sockets. I'll list in the descriptions, parts and tools and that kind of thing. Outside of that, if you wish to connect with me socially, Google+, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Automotive questions, EricTheCarGuy.com, all linked in the description. Be safe, have fun, stay dirty. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.